Black Waitress slept beside billionaire CEO's shivering daughter. His next move changed her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's incredible story. Picture this, a rainy, cold night in New York City. The kind of evening where the streets are slick with rain, and the air feels heavier, as if the city itself is holding its breath. Inside a luxurious penthouse on the top floor of a skyscraper, billionaire CEO Thomas Williams sat by the fireplace, his mind racing. His daughter, Emily, a sweet girl of only 10, had been shivering uncontrollably for hours. She was sick, but not just physically. The poor child had been battling a fever that no medication seemed to ease. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside the apartment. Despite the plush furniture, the golden chandeliers, and the warmth of the fire, the room felt suffocating. Emily's small frame was curled up under blankets, her pale face flushed with fever, her breathing shallow. Her father, a man used to commanding boardrooms and making million-dollar deals, felt helpless. He was accustomed to being in control, but in this moment, with his daughter suffering, he felt powerless. His wife was away on business, and he had no one else to turn to. That's when Sarah, the waitress from the restaurant they had dined at earlier that evening, unexpectedly showed up at his door. Thomas had not expected to see her again. She had been a quiet, professional presence at the dinner, the kind of person who blended into the background, unnoticed by the wealth and power in the room. But tonight, she was different. She arrived with nothing but a concern for Emily's well-being. Sarah had noticed the little girl shivering and, without hesitation, offered to stay behind after the dinner to help. At first, Thomas had been dismissive, assuming that a waitress had no business in his personal space, especially when it came to his daughter's health. But when he saw Emily's condition, something shifted inside him. He felt desperate. Maybe, just maybe, this woman might have the answer he couldn't find. Sarah's calming presence in the room, her soothing voice as she sat next to Emily, made all the difference. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew how to care, how to comfort, and she understood the importance of human connection. She stayed by Emily's side, offering gentle words of encouragement, and even lying down next to her to keep her warm. As the hours passed, Thomas watched from the other side of the room, his heart heavy with guilt. Here was a woman, a stranger, who cared more for his daughter's well-being than he did in that moment. He realized that he had been so consumed with his business, his empire, that he had overlooked the most important thing in his life, his family. That night, something inside him clicked. Thomas made a promise to himself that he would change. Sarah didn't just save Emily from the cold, she saved him from his own blind ambition. When Emily finally fell asleep, her fever broken, Thomas knew he could never repay Sarah for what she had done. But he would try. He would change not only how he treated the people around him, but also how he saw them. And that would be his next move, the one that would change both Sarah's life and his own. Stay tuned for what happens next, because this is only the beginning of a journey that will change everything. The next morning, the storm had finally subsided, but the city was still damp and shrouded in a thick fog. The streets of New York City, usually bustling with activity, now felt eerily quiet, as if the city itself had taken a moment to catch its breath. Inside the penthouse, things were different. Thomas Williams stood by the window, looking out at the skyline. The weight of the past few days was settling in. His daughter, Emily, was now asleep in her room, her fever finally broken. But Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him had changed. The events of the night before, Sarah's unexpected kindness, her selflessness, he couldn't stop thinking about it. The contrast between the world he had built for himself, full of power and influence, and the simple yet profound gesture of a stranger sitting beside his daughter, made him question everything. As he stood there, staring out the window, Sarah had quietly slipped out of the apartment, leaving behind nothing but a thank you note on the kitchen counter. It was brief, saying only that she was grateful to have been able to help and that she hoped Emily would feel better soon. Thomas knew he could never let her walk out of his life without doing something to show his gratitude. But he also knew that what he had witnessed in that brief interaction with Sarah went beyond simple gratitude. It was a reminder of something he had lost. Human connection, empathy. These were things he had sacrificed on his rise to the top, blinded by ambition and the drive to build his empire. And now, standing there, staring at the empty room where Sarah had sat with his daughter, he realized that he had been wrong. He had been wrong in more ways than one. It wasn't just about the millions he had made. It wasn't about the fame or the prestige. It was about the people. The ones you look down on, the ones you assume are insignificant. Sarah had shown him that. And now, more than ever, Thomas knew he had to make things right. Not just for Emily, but for himself. Hours later, Thomas had arranged a meeting with Sarah. He didn't know exactly what he was going to say, but he knew he needed to offer something more than a simple thank you. He needed to offer her respect. When Sarah arrived at the restaurant where they had first met, Thomas was waiting. She didn't expect to see him there. She thought he had forgotten about her, just like so many others in his world. But Thomas wasn't there to make a deal or offer her a job. He was there to apologize. He was there to show her that he understood now. She wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't just a nobody. She had a value that far exceeded any number he had ever written down on a contract. "I owe you more than just thanks," Thomas began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You changed my life last night. You reminded me of what really matters. You showed me what I had lost in my pursuit of success." Sarah listened, unsure of how to respond. She had always been the one to serve, the one to care for others. But now, here was the man who had everything, admitting he was wrong. It was surreal. "I don't know what I can do to repay you," Thomas continued. "But I want to offer you something. A position. A partnership. Something more than what you've been doing. Because I believe you deserve it." Sarah stood silently, taking in his words. But she knew. She knew she couldn't accept what he was offering. She couldn't take the easy way out, even if it meant her life would change forever. "Thank you, Mr. Williams," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But the truth is, I don't need anything from you. I'm not here to climb anyone's ladder. I'm here to do my job, to make a difference in the way I can." Thomas was taken aback. He had expected her to say yes, to take the opportunity. But she didn't. And in that moment, he respected her even more. She wasn't here for the money or the fame. She was here to live her truth. And that truth was something he had to learn. "I understand," Thomas replied, his voice soft. "But if you ever change your mind, my offer still stands. You've taught me more than anyone ever has. And I'll never forget that." As Sarah left, she couldn't help but feel a small shift inside herself. She had done something for Thomas Williams that no one else had been able to do. She had made him see the truth. And while she wasn't sure what the future held, she knew one thing. Her life had already changed. And it had nothing to do with money or power. It had everything to do with something far more valuable: human connection. That was the lesson she had taught him, and it was the one he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Weeks passed since that fateful night, and things were slowly returning to normal for Thomas Williams. But something inside him had irrevocably changed. He had been the king of his empire, but for the first time, he realized that his empire meant nothing if it lacked the one thing that truly mattered: love, family, and human connection. Every morning, he woke up with a sense of gratitude, a sense of purpose that had been absent for years. He had started spending more time with his daughter, Emily. He was present, listening, truly seeing her for the first time. But even more, he found himself thinking about Sarah, the woman who had so quietly entered his life and turned everything upside down. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a force of nature. She had reminded him that the most powerful thing anyone could offer wasn't money, fame, or connections. It was kindness, it was compassion. But Sarah remained out of reach, and Thomas knew that his actions hadn't earned the right to ask her to stay in his life. He had to show her that he had learned from his mistakes, that he had understood what she had taught him. He had to make things right. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Thomas decided to visit Sarah again. This time, he wasn't just there to thank her. He was there to offer something meaningful, something that came from a place of respect. As he entered the small, cozy diner where she worked, the familiar hum of clinking silverware and sizzling food greeted him. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, and the place was bustling with the usual crowd. But when Sarah saw him walk in, her eyes widened in surprise. She wasn't expecting him, but she didn't show it. Instead, She walked up to him with a neutral smile, ready to take his order, as though nothing had changed. "Mr. Williams," she said, her voice steady. "What can I get you today?" Thomas took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment. "Sarah, I didn't come here for a meal today," he said softly. She raised an eyebrow, clearly confused, but said nothing. "I came because I need to talk. I owe you more than just a thank you. You've taught me things I didn't even know I needed to learn." Sarah was silent, waiting for him to continue. Thomas took a step closer, looking her directly in the eyes. "I've been blind for a long time," he said. "I thought money and power were everything. But you showed me that what really matters is how we treat others. You showed me that compassion is more valuable than any deal I've ever signed." Sarah's gaze softened slightly, but she remained composed. Thomas hesitated before continuing. "I want to offer you something, but it's not about work or money. It's about respect. I want to know you, not just the waitress, but the woman who changed my life. You're someone who deserves more than what you've been given." Sarah shook her head slightly, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm not looking for anything, Mr. Williams," she replied calmly. "I do my job because I believe in it. I'm not interested in favors or deals." Thomas smiled, feeling a warmth spread in his chest. She wasn't asking for anything. She had already given him everything he needed. But he also knew that he had to do something. "I know, and I respect that," he said. "But I still want to show you how much your actions meant to me. I'm offering you a scholarship to the school of your choice. I want you to have the chance to pursue whatever you dream of, whether that's in business, the arts, or anything else. You've given me something that money can't buy, and this is my way of showing you that I understand." Sarah stood there for a moment, her eyes studying him. She wasn't sure what to say. She hadn't expected any of this. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw the sincerity in them. It wasn't about the money or the opportunity. It was about the recognition of her worth, her humanity. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Williams," she said quietly. "But I don't need it. I've already got everything I need." Thomas didn't push. He understood. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. "But please know that if you ever change your mind, the offer will always stand." As Sarah turned to walk away, Thomas felt a sense of peace. He had done what he could to show his gratitude. He had made things right, not with grand gestures, but with a simple recognition of the value of human connection. Sarah wasn't someone he could control, but she had shown him the path to a better version of himself. And that, he knew, was more valuable than anything he had ever achieved in his life. The weeks after Thomas Williams' offer to Sarah felt like a turning point for both of them. While Thomas had returned to his life of power and influence, he wasn't the same man who had stepped into Sarah's life that rainy night. Every decision he made, every meeting he attended, was now approached with a sense of awareness he had never known before. His empire, once the center of his world, no longer held the same allure. What mattered now was the legacy he would leave behind. And that legacy was not one built on wealth, but on how he treated people. But Sarah? She was different. She had heard his offer, and though she had politely declined, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She had been content with her life, working long hours at the diner, raising her daughter, and living simply. But Thomas's words, the way he spoke about respect and value, had struck a chord deep within her. She hadn't expected to be seen. She hadn't expected to be valued. In all the years she had worked in that restaurant, she had become used to being invisible to people like Thomas. But his words had changed something inside her. One afternoon, as Sarah was closing up the diner, she found herself standing at the door, looking out at the setting sun. The thought of leaving it all behind, of stepping into something bigger, lingered in her mind. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the opportunity to do something more. She had a vision that went beyond serving food. She had always dreamed of running her own business, of creating a place where people could feel like they mattered, no matter their background or status. A place where kindness was the currency and respect was the foundation. But dreams like that took money, and Sarah had none. That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that Thomas's offer had been more than just a gesture. It was a lifeline. He had seen her, and maybe, just maybe, she could make something of it. The next day, Sarah took the first step. She called Thomas. It was a decision that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. She had no idea what would happen, but she knew she couldn't keep living the way she had been. Thomas answered on the first ring. "Sarah," he said, surprised to hear from her. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I've been thinking, Sarah said, her voice steady but unsure. About your offer. About everything. And I think I'm ready. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Thomas couldn't quite place it, whether it was surprise or relief. But whatever it was, it stirred something inside him. Ready for what? He asked gently. Ready to take a chance, Sarah replied. Not for me, but for my future. For my daughter's future. And maybe even for a better world. Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. There was something powerful in her words, something raw and real. It was a side of her he hadn't seen before, but a side that now spoke to him on a level he hadn't expected. Sarah, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I knew there was more to you than just the woman who served dinner that night. You've got something inside you. Something special. I'm not looking for handouts, Thomas, Sarah replied, her voice steady. I just want a chance to prove that I can make a difference. And you will, Thomas said, his words firm. You'll have everything you need to succeed. I'll make sure of it. It was then that Sarah knew she had made the right choice. She wasn't just taking a job or accepting a favor. She was stepping into a future where she could build something meaningful. Over the next few months, Sarah worked tirelessly with Thomas, learning the ropes of business, using her newfound opportunities to build her dream. She wasn't just the woman who had once served him dinner. She was a force in her own right, changing the world around her, one small decision at a time. Thomas, too, had transformed. He found himself learning from Sarah every day, how to be humble, how to give back, how to put people before profit. It wasn't long before Sarah's restaurant opened its doors, and it became more than just a business. It became a sanctuary, a place where everyone, regardless of their background, could come and feel seen, feel valued. And every day, Sarah stood at the door, watching people walk in, knowing that she had created something bigger than herself. She had taken that first step, and it had led her to a future she had only dreamed of, a future that now belonged to her. Months passed since Sarah had opened her restaurant, and the changes she had made were undeniable. The once small diner, known for its warm meals and comforting atmosphere, had blossomed into a thriving hub for the community. Sarah's vision had come to life in ways she never imagined. Her daughter, Lily, was thriving too, attending a new school where she felt safe and happy, surrounded by friends who saw her for who she was, not just for her mother's past. Meanwhile, Thomas Williams watched from a distance, marveling at how Sarah had transformed her life and the lives of those around her. He'd kept his word, investing in her future, but the results were even greater than he'd hoped. Every time he visited the restaurant, he could see the ripple effect of her hard work. Sarah had become a beacon of hope for many, not just through the meals she served, but through her actions. She had built a place where people could feel truly seen, valued, and heard. And it was more than just a restaurant. It was a community. One evening, as Sarah was preparing for another busy night, she received an unexpected visitor. Thomas had arrived unannounced, and this time, he wasn't just there for a meal. He was there to see her. Sarah looked up as he walked through the door, his usual confident stride replaced by a more humble pace. He wasn't wearing the usual suit or expensive shoes. Instead, he was dressed casually, as if he was here not as a businessman, but as someone who had come to visit a friend. I hope I'm not interrupting, Thomas said, his voice filled with warmth. I was just passing through the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. I haven't had a meal here in a while. Sarah smiled and gestured to an empty seat at the bar. You're always welcome here, Thomas, she replied. As he sat down, they exchanged pleasantries, but there was something different in the air that evening. Thomas wasn't just there for food or small talk. He had something important to share. After a few minutes of casual conversation, he turned to Sarah, his expression serious but kind. Sarah, I've been meaning to tell you something, he began, his voice softer now. What you've done here, it's incredible. I've watched your success, and I've seen the impact you've made. You've changed this neighborhood. You've given people a chance, and in doing so, you've given me something I didn't even know I needed. Sarah looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his words. She hadn't expected a compliment, let alone such a personal one. I'm not sure what you mean, she said, her brow furrowing slightly. I'm just doing what I can. No, Sarah, Thomas replied gently. You're doing more than just providing a service. You're changing lives. You taught me something that no business deal or number could ever teach me. You reminded me that it's not about the money, it's about the people. You reminded me of what it means to truly give, to truly care. Sarah's heart swelled with emotion, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. Thank you, Thomas, she finally said, her voice catching. That means more to me than you know. Thomas smiled and took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot lately. About my role in this world, about the legacy I want to leave behind. And I realized that it's not about the deals I've made or the businesses I've built. It's about people like you, Sarah. You've shown me what it means to live with purpose, to live with heart. Sarah was quiet, not knowing how to respond to such an unexpected confession. Thomas had always been a man of power, someone used to being in control, and yet, here he was, opening up in a way that was raw and vulnerable. I've decided, he continued, that I want to help you. Not because I feel obligated, but because I believe in what you're doing. I want to be a part of this. I want to help expand your restaurant, make it a chain, something that can reach even more people. Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never expected this. Thomas, I don't know what to say, she stammered. I never asked you for this. You didn't have to, Thomas replied. I want to do this. I've seen what you've built, and I believe in you. I believe in this community, in what you're offering. I want to help make it bigger. This is your time, Sarah, and I want to be there to support you, however I can. The offer hung in the air, and Sarah felt a mix of gratitude, surprise, and uncertainty. She had come so far on her own, and yet, now, here was Thomas, offering her a chance to expand, to take her vision to the next level. It was everything she had dreamed of, and yet, it was also a reminder of the hard work it had taken to get here. But Sarah knew, deep down, that this was her next step. She couldn't let fear or doubt hold her back now. Thank you, Thomas, she said, her voice steady with conviction. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready for it. Let's do this. Thomas smiled, a look of pride on his face. I knew you'd say that. Together, we can make something amazing happen. And just like that, Sarah's journey had taken another unexpected turn. With Thomas by her side, she was about to embark on a new chapter, one where the legacy of kindness, respect, and connection would continue to grow, one meal at a time. It had been several months since Thomas and Sarah had agreed to work together, and the changes they had set in motion were beginning to take shape. Sarah's restaurant, which had started as a modest dream, was now thriving beyond her wildest expectations. With Thomas's guidance and investment, the once small diner had expanded into multiple locations, each one embodying Sarah's original vision, a place where kindness and respect were at the heart of everything. But even as the business grew, Sarah never lost sight of the values that had brought her here. She worked tirelessly to ensure that every person who walked through the doors of her restaurants felt like they mattered. It was that personal touch that had made her place special, and it was something she was determined to keep alive. Meanwhile, Thomas had become an unexpected partner in more ways than one. He was no longer just a businessman offering financial support. He had become a true ally in Sarah's mission. His role in the company was hands-off, but he visited often, offering ideas and feedback, and most importantly, showing up for Sarah in ways he hadn't before. He'd learned from her how to listen, how to be patient, how to build something with heart rather than just strategy. One evening, Sarah sat at her desk, going over the numbers and plans for the new location they were opening in another city. It was a significant milestone, one that marked the success of their collaboration. As she looked over the figures, a feeling of contentment washed over her. She had done it. She had built something real, something lasting. She had done it her way. But just as she was about to close her laptop for the night, there was a knock at the door. Sarah looked up, expecting one of her team members, but instead, Thomas walked in, looking serious but with a smile that softened the edge of his expression. What's going on? Sarah asked, noticing the shift in his usual easygoing demeanor. Thomas sat down across from her, his gaze steady. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, the business, the growth, the changes. I know we've been doing well, but I feel like there's still something missing. Sarah tilted her head, intrigued. What do you mean? Thomas hesitated for a moment before speaking. We've built something amazing, but it's all been about expansion, about growth. And while that's important, I think we need to take a step back and focus on the heart of what we're doing. I've seen how you connect with people, how you make them feel seen, and I think that's the real secret to this business. It's not just about food or service. It's about creating a space where people feel like they belong. Sarah's eyes softened as she listened to his words. She had always known that her mission was about more than just running a restaurant. It was about creating a community. But hearing Thomas acknowledge it in this way meant more than she could express. "I agree," she said, her voice quiet but full of conviction. "That's why I've always kept the core of this business grounded in the values of kindness and respect. I want people to feel something when they walk in. I want them to leave feeling better than when they came in." Thomas nodded, his gaze intense. "Exactly. And I think we need to share that message more. We've done the business side of things. Now it's time to focus on the impact we're making, the lives we're touching." Sarah leaned back in her chair, considering his words. This was it. This was the next step in her journey, the one that would take her business from success to significance. "What do you suggest?" she asked. Thomas smiled. "Let's start a campaign. Not just to bring in more customers, but to spread the message of what we stand for. We can partner with local charities, do community outreach, and make sure that every person who walks through our doors knows that they are valued." Sarah's heart swelled with pride. This was the kind of business she had always dreamed of, a business that wasn't just profitable, but purposeful. "I love that idea," she said, her eyes shining. "Let's do it." And so they did. Over the next few months, Sarah and Thomas worked together to launch a new initiative that would impact not only the cities where their restaurants were located, but the lives of people in need. They began to host charity events, offering free meals to those who couldn't afford them, and partnered with local organizations to provide resources to underprivileged communities. Their message of kindness and respect spread like wildfire, and soon, their restaurant chain was known not just for its food, but for its heart. People began to take notice, not just of the meals being served, but of the way the business was changing the lives of those it touched. Customers became more than just patrons. They became part of a larger movement, one that was rooted in compassion and community. As Sarah watched her vision unfold, she realized that this was the true meaning of success. It wasn't just about making money. It was about making a difference. And with Thomas by her side, she knew that this was only the beginning. Together, they had built something bigger than themselves, a legacy of kindness that would continue to grow, reaching more people every day. As Sarah continued to watch her business grow, it became clear that the journey she had started with Thomas was evolving into something far beyond just a partnership. Their shared mission to create a community-based restaurant with heart had started to reach people in ways they hadn't anticipated. Their restaurant chain was no longer just about serving food. It was about creating an environment where kindness was at the core of everything they did. Word spread quickly about their charity events, their work with local organizations, and how they gave back to the community. Customers who came to enjoy a meal soon became part of something bigger. They were drawn not just by the delicious food, but by the message that resonated through every corner of the business. "You matter." As Sarah looked out the window of the newest restaurant, she felt a sense of peace that she had never felt before. She had achieved so much, but the best part wasn't the success or the recognition. It was knowing that she was making a real difference in people's lives. That night, as Sarah and Thomas sat together in the quiet of the restaurant, a familiar warmth filled the air between them. It had been a long day, but there was something in the air tonight that made it feel different. "I've been thinking," Sarah began, breaking the silence, "about how far we've come and how much we've been able to do together." Thomas nodded, his gaze steady and thoughtful. "We've come a long way," he said, "but I think we both know that the work we're doing isn't just about expanding the business. It's about leaving a legacy of giving." Sarah smiled, but there was something bittersweet about it. She had always been the one to do the giving, to put others first, and now, with everything she had built, she felt as though it was time for her to start receiving, too. She had always prided herself on standing on her own, but now, with Thomas by her side, she realized that they were building something together, a shared dream that was more powerful than anything she could have imagined. "You've changed everything for me, Thomas," she said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "I never thought I would be in this position. I never thought I would be able to do something this big. But you gave me a chance to believe in myself, to believe that what I was doing was important." Thomas reached across the table, his hand resting gently on hers. "You did this, Sarah. I was just lucky enough to help support you. You had the vision. You had the heart. That's what's made all the difference. As Sarah looked into his eyes, she saw the sincerity in his words. It was true. It had always been Sarah's vision, her drive, that had carried them this far. She had worked tirelessly to create a space where everyone was welcomed, where kindness was the cornerstone of every interaction. It was her passion that had turned a simple diner into something much more. But we're not done yet, Sarah said, her voice filled with renewed determination. I want to continue to grow this. I want to expand our impact, reach even more people, and do more good. Thomas smiled, a spark of excitement lighting up his eyes. I knew you'd say that, he said, and I'm with you every step of the way. With that, they began planning the next phase of their journey. They discussed new locations, community partnerships, and ways to bring their message of kindness and inclusivity to even more people. They didn't know exactly where this journey would take them, but one thing was clear. They were in this together, united by a shared belief that kindness, compassion, and community could change the world. Months later, the new locations opened, and the ripple effect continued. People from all walks of life came to Sarah's restaurants, not just for a meal, but for a sense of belonging. They came for the warm atmosphere, for the feeling of being seen, and for the understanding that they mattered. Sarah and Thomas had succeeded in creating something far beyond a business. It was a movement. And as they stood together at the grand opening of the newest location, surrounded by staff, customers, and members of the community, Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was the legacy she had worked so hard to build, and it was only just beginning. As the months passed, Sarah's restaurants continued to flourish, and the impact of their work spread far beyond what she could have imagined. The locations were no longer just about serving food. They had become gathering places for the community, spaces where people could connect, share their stories, and experience the kind of kindness Sarah had always believed in. The ripple effect of their message reached more and more people every day, and Sarah's dream had truly taken on a life of its own. But as the business grew, so did the challenges. There were always new hurdles to overcome: competing businesses, supply chain issues, staffing challenges. But Sarah didn't shy away from these obstacles. She faced them head-on, as she always had, with the same grit and determination that had fueled her from the very beginning. Despite the pressure, she knew that the heart of the business, its core values, could never be compromised. As the company continued to expand, Thomas became more involved, but his role had shifted. He wasn't just an investor anymore. He was a partner in the truest sense of the word. He had always admired Sarah's vision, but now, he was actively helping her navigate the complexities of running a rapidly growing company. They had become a dynamic team, each bringing something essential to the table. One afternoon, as Sarah and Thomas were meeting in the office to discuss the upcoming year's expansion plans, they took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. It's hard to believe how much we've grown, Thomas said, leaning back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. It feels like just yesterday we were sitting here, brainstorming over the first restaurant. And now we're talking about opening 5 more this year. Sarah smiled, the familiar sense of pride swelling in her chest. I never could have done this without you, she said, her voice sincere. I mean, I had the vision, but you've been the one to help me bring it to life, to make sure it didn't just stay a dream. Thomas shook his head, a modest smile on his face. You did the hard work, Sarah. I just helped give it a little push. It was always you. And I think what we've built here is just the beginning. Sarah looked around the office, the walls lined with blueprints, expansion plans, and photos of their community events. It was overwhelming, in the best way possible. I think it's time to do more, she said suddenly. We've done so much for the people who walk through our doors, but I want to reach even further. I want to start doing more for the next generation, for the kids who don't have the same opportunities one had. Thomas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Sarah stood up and began pacing, her thoughts racing. We've built a community here, but I want to start mentoring young people, especially those who are growing up in situations like I did. I want to help them understand that they don't have to just accept their circumstances. They can change their own lives, just like I did. Thomas stood up as well, his interest piqued. I love that idea, he said. We can partner with schools, offer internships, teach them skills that will help them get ahead. We could even create a scholarship fund for those who want to pursue their own dreams. Sarah's eyes lit up. Exactly. And we could hold workshops, teach them about business, entrepreneurship, the value of kindness and leadership. There's so much we can do to give back to the community that gave us so much. Thomas smiled, impressed by her vision. I'm all in. Let's make it happen. And so they did. Over the next few months, Sarah and Thomas launched a mentorship program that would not only provide work experience, but also equip young people with the tools they needed to succeed in life. They partnered with local schools and youth organizations, offering scholarships to students interested in business and leadership. The program was an immediate success, and soon, Sarah found herself mentoring a new generation of young people who were eager to learn, grow, and make a difference in the world. As the years passed, the impact of Sarah's business grew exponentially. What had started as a single restaurant had become a nationwide movement, a symbol of what could happen when people put kindness and community first. The mentorship program flourished, and many of the young people Sarah had worked with went on to become leaders in their own right, creating positive change in their own communities. Looking back, Sarah knew that the success of her restaurants wasn't measured by the number of locations or the amount of money in the bank. It was measured by the lives she had touched, the people she had inspired, and the difference she had made in the world. And with Thomas by her side, she knew that their work would continue to impact generations to come. Together, they had created something that was more than just a business. It was a legacy of love, kindness, and empowerment. Years passed, and Sarah's business continued to flourish, reaching new heights. But more importantly, her impact on the community only deepened. The mentorship program she had launched had grown beyond her expectations, helping hundreds of young people, many of whom had once been overlooked or forgotten, realize their potential. She had become not just a business owner, but a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of kindness. As Sarah sat in the office of one of her now larger restaurants, looking out over the bustling city, she thought back to that rainy night when everything had changed. She had been a waitress in a small diner, simply trying to get by. Now, she was a successful business owner, a mentor, and a leader, all because she had taken a chance on herself and the people around her. What she had built was more than just a successful chain of restaurants. It was a movement, a reminder that success could be measured not by money or power, but by the difference you make in the lives of others. Sarah's phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Thomas. "We did it," it read. She smiled. Over the years, Thomas had been her unwavering ally, offering advice, wisdom, and support. Together, they had turned their shared vision into something real, something lasting. He had been there from the very beginning, when she had first opened her restaurant, and now, as their business had expanded, he continued to stand by her side. But their relationship had evolved beyond business. They had become lifelong friends, united by a shared belief that the world could be changed for the better. Sarah typed a quick response. "We've only just begun." She had always been someone who believed in the power of the journey, not just the destination. And as she looked ahead to the future, she knew there was still so much more to do. There were still communities to support, more lives to change, and more young people to mentor. Her legacy was far from complete. That afternoon, Sarah was invited to speak at a community event in a nearby park. The event was small, just a gathering of local families and individuals who had been touched by the work she and Thomas had done together. As Sarah stood before the crowd, she could see the faces of people who had once walked into her restaurant not knowing what to expect, but leaving with a sense of belonging, with a feeling that they mattered. She had always wanted her restaurant to be more than just a place to eat. It had always been a place for people to feel seen, valued, and appreciated. "Thank you all for being here today," Sarah began, her voice steady, filled with the conviction that had guided her every step. "When I started this business, I didn't know where it would take me. I didn't know that it would turn into something that could change lives. But I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to create a space where people could feel like they belonged, a space where kindness wasn't just a word, but a way of life." She paused, looking around at the faces in the crowd. "This isn't just my story. It's our story. It's the story of every single person who has walked through these doors, who has given their time, their energy, and their support to make this community what it is. And it's the story of every person who has come here looking for something more than a meal, more than a business, more than just a place to be. They came here looking for connection. And that connection is what has made this place something special." The crowd nodded, many of them silently acknowledging the truth in her words. Sarah felt the warmth of their support, their gratitude, and their shared belief in the power of kindness. As she finished her speech, she felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond anything she had ever achieved in business. This was it. This was the true measure of success. It wasn't about the money or the fame. It was about the lives she had touched, the people she had empowered, and the community she had helped build. The next day, Sarah met with Thomas again. They sat in the same restaurant where they had first started discussing their future. Over the years, their relationship had been forged through hard work, mutual respect, and a shared vision. They had grown together, both personally and professionally. It's amazing to think about how far we've come, Thomas said, his voice filled with pride. From that first restaurant to where we are now, we've built something that's more than just a business. We've built something that will last, something that will continue to grow and impact lives for years to come. Sarah nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. But the best part is knowing that this isn't the end, she said. There's still so much more we can do. So many more people we can help. This is just the beginning. As they sat there, surrounded by the familiar hum of the restaurant, Sarah realized that her journey had come full circle. She had started as a waitress with a dream, and now she was standing on the other side, able to offer others the same opportunities she had once dreamed of. And with that, she knew that her work would never truly be done. There would always be someone new to help, someone new to mentor, and another life to change. This was her legacy, the legacy of kindness, community, and the belief that together they could make the world a better place. In this powerful and inspiring journey, we explore a series of Black stories that highlight the resilience, transformation, and triumph of an individual who defied the odds. Starting from humble beginnings as a waitress, the protagonist overcomes adversity and builds a successful business grounded in kindness, community, and empowerment. As we follow her journey, we witness how her vision, dedication, and compassion for others create not only a thriving restaurant chain, but a movement that transforms lives. This is a tale of how one woman's dream grows into something far greater than herself, proving that the true measure of success lies not in wealth or power, but in the positive impact one has on others. Throughout this journey, we see how the protagonist, with the help of unexpected allies, builds a legacy that empowers those who feel unseen, offering them opportunities to change their own lives. As these Black stories unfold, we are reminded of the importance of community, mentorship, and the power of human connection. From the early struggles to the ultimate success, these stories demonstrate that with resilience, heart, and the right support, anyone can change their destiny. This collection of Black stories is a testament to the power of kindness and compassion, and how these values can create lasting change, not only for individuals, but for entire communities. Each step of this journey is a reminder that we all have the ability to make a difference, and when we come together, we can achieve great things.